Buenos días. Bienvenidos nuevamente a una sesión más, a una clase más sobre los nuevos controladores de torque de Mountz. El día de hoy vamos a presentar un segundo tema relacionado con la programación de DC Controllers. Ah, Enseguida de esta presentación, una hora y media más tarde, tenemos una tercera clase con un tema diferente y el día de mañana tendremos dos clases más, así que están todos invitados a participar. Estas sesiones se llevan 25 o 30 minutos, queremos hacerlas cortas y precisas alrededor del tema que estamos sugiriendo. La presentación va a estar hecha a cargo del señor Dave Cash, especialista en producto de DC Controllers, y la presentación será hecha en inglés. Am, Cualquiera de ustedes puede hacer cualquier pregunta, la pueden hacer por medio del chat, pueden alzar su mano, lo pueden hacer en inglés, lo pueden hacer en español. Estoy yo aquí para ayudarles en caso de que tengamos que traducir o que tengan necesidad de entender algo más a fondo. Así que sin más preámbulo, vamos con el señor Dave Cash. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Damien. Again, yes, my name is David Cash. I'm a member of the marketing team here at Mounts and part of the technical group as well. And so we're going to start again today with our first class. And we're going to just basically take a look at the controller, uh, the menu, and how that works, how you enter the menu system, and we're going to take a look at the ports and things like that. But we'll kind of jump into that as we go here. So in our introduction that we just had, we talked about what is an error-proofing screwdriver system. We talked about how we can use that with our EC and ECT products, which is our new corded, current, and transducerized tools. We also have our robotic and automation series in our ADC DC system, as well as our EPT series, which is our battery transducerized DC tools. And so we're going to be talking about that a little bit later, actually tomorrow, on that particular item as well. And so we went through the different things that we can use with our error proofing, whether it be our tightening strategies, the ability to have different parameters that we can use, the job and model function, also the ability for screw counting within that process, and also the ability to control some of our digital inputs and outputs. And so in this class session, we're going to be, again, looking at the controller, the different items that are on that. We'll look at the functionality of the different menus that we have. And then we're also going to look at the IOs. And then one point I did want to make with this is that we do have software for the programming of the controller. So everything that we can do on the controller, we can do in the software. And then there are some special software features that we can use also as well for some some process statistical analysis and some other things like that. But I did want to make the point that the software for our controllers is included with the purchase of the product. So there's not the need for any type of additional license or licensing fees. You can freely put the software onto any PC that you might have within your facility, so you can use that software without any restrictions to it. So with that, we'll go ahead and kind of jump in and take a look at the controller itself. So let's go ahead and do that. And so here is our controller. It is a vertical controller. We do have the measurements, so it's 25 centimeters tall. It is about 16 or so centimeters wide and 18 centimeters in depth. And so if we take a look at the entire unit here, I'll just kind of pan around and you'll be able to see the unit itself, you can see here that we do have a mounting bracket that is included with this. So you'll be able to mount this in the assembly area. We also do have a stand as an accessory, and you can see that here on this unit if it needs to be placed onto the work surface. So down below here is where we have our port connections. We'll take a look at that here in just a second. And as we continue to move the controller fully to its 360 position, there is one other item here. We have this particular door, which is secured by a fastener here. And this houses an SD card for the controller. And so with that SD card, we have the ability to back up the parameters that are stored on here. And we also have the ability to store and record all of the function data that happens with the controller. So things like the torque data for a certain time, a date, which gets recorded, which preset was being used, if there was an error for that run. We also monitor things like if there was a preset change, is the tool being put into reverse, a number of different things that we can record for the system, and we can utilize an SD card to do that. And so that is where that SD card is housed. So if it is something that you might want to take advantage of and to be able to use to store data and retrieve that at a later or periodic time, that's where that is located on this particular controller. So if we take a look at the actual ports that we have, so right, let me just make one adjustment here. Okay, so as I mentioned on the connections for the controller are located on the bottom of the controller. First, we have our RS-232 port. That can be used for the use of a barcode scanner. It can also be used for connecting to the controller through the PC. And it also can be used for data collection as well. Next to that, we have our 25-pin input and output connection. And that's where we can hook up the different input devices or output devices via the wiring diagram for that, that connection. Next to the I/O port, we do have our Ethernet port. So we can connect to the controller with the use of the software via Ethernet as well. This can also be put onto an internal network. So you would be able to access the controller through the software via an internal network. So that's the Ethernet port there. Down below here, we have our driver cable connection. Obviously, this is where we plug in the tool that's being used onto that. And then next to that, we also have our power supply. And so this model is a 120 volt model, but we also have a 240 available as well. And those are indicated by the different part numbers that we have for the controllers here. So that is the bottom connections. These are the different ports that we have available on this particular controller. Again, the mounting bracket to be able to mount this to a assembly station is included with that. And then we also have the stand as an accessory if it needs to be used onto a tabletop for your application. And so let's go ahead and we'll take a closer look at the controller. Once it gets powered on, we'll look at the menu, and then we'll also take a look at the navigation through that. So let's go ahead and do that. Let me just move this out of the way. Okay, so now we have the controller here. I'm going to go ahead and power it on from underneath here. And what you'll notice is that the system is going to go ahead and boot up in the operation mode. And so at this point, we can start to use the tool. It is currently right now in preset number 1. We can have the controller boot up into a specific preset that we would like. So that is available. But just to take a look at the interface here and give you an idea of what you are seeing. Right now, we don't have any torque value displayed from our previous fastening, but if we did, that would be right here. This is also going to display the torque once we've finished a particular operation that we've done. We have what our target torque is. In this case, we're at 5 Newton meters. We also have our RPM that we'll be using at 271. We then have the amount of time that it took for our last fastening. And then we also have the amount of angle or turn that it took to fully seat that. And that value is broken up into the engagement angle, and then also once the fastener mates with the surface. Those two items will comprise of the total angle that is done, or that has been done during the process. And so that gives us the ability to monitor the angle for a specific rundown. We also have the account function down here. This is kind of a global setting, and that can be set to whatever value you would like it to be. But again, that's a global setting. When we talk about some more of the advanced functions and the jobs and the modeling type of functionality, all of that, the screw counting feature is done for a specific assembly process. So that would change that value there. And then we also have our snug angle, which is another value that we can use within our parameters. We'll have the time and date down at the lower portion of the screen here. And again, we are in the operation mode to be able to use the system. At this point, there are certain things that we can go ahead and use on the screen right now. If we wanted to change to a different preset, all we really need to do is come in here. We can tap on the screen. This will allow us to select which preset we would like to use. So we have the ability to have 15 different presets available throughout the range of the tool. We also have 2 other specific tightening strategies that we can use, which would be our multi-sequence A and multi-sequence B. We'll touch on those in the next class that we're going to be having. And so we can come in and we can select a different preset that we would like to use. And so now this is preset number 2. And we're now at 3 Newton meters for our setting. And so this is how we can come in and we can change a preset. Let me go ahead and zoom in a little bit so you might be able to get a closer look at the values. So again, preset number 2, we can either hit this drop down menu button there, and select which preset we would like to use, or we can just tap on that preset there, and we can select which preset we would like to use. So these are things that the operator can do, or we can lock the operator out from being able to change a preset. So this might be helpful if we are using some process control via the use of a barcode to change a preset, use of a PLC to change a preset for a specific part that may be part of the assembly. So we can come in and we can select this value right now, but we can also lock that out so the operator can't come in and change it. For the global setting on the screw count, we could come in and we could modify that if we wanted to change the count. Currently right now I have it set to 1, but if we had it set at a different value, we could change that value there as well. So we have the ability to control what's happening with the screen. So we can either include the operator or exclude them. So that is what we're looking at for the operation function. If we go and we want to basically log in to our main menu structure, we can do that by tapping up on the top here, these 4 little boxes that we have. We tap on that. Then we would need to enter the password. This screen also is going to show us what firmware version we're using, which driver we have connected, what that serial number is, the torque values that we can use for that particular tool, and then also the RPM speeds that we can use for that tool, which is up here. And then we would need to enter our password. And so the password is something that you can change within the settings of the controller parameter, but the default password that we have that ships with the unit is 0. So we just simply hit 0 and enter, and that is going to push us into our menu. And so it might be a little difficult to see through the video here, but we have our box up here in the upper left, which is our parameters. We also have to the upper right, which is our remote tab. We have our setting tab down here, and then we also have our monitoring tab down here. And in the center, we can just log out, or we can use this back arrow up here to get back to the main operation screen. So if we take a look at the monitoring tab first, this gives us the ability to look at certain features that may be within the system and the controller. The first item that we have here is we have the ability to actually graph a particular rundown. And then with that rundown, we have the ability to have 2 different channels that we can monitor. So we can have our torque, we can have the current, speed. I'll just go ahead and hit speed right now, and then we can also monitor, say, the angle. And then we can go ahead and start that. And then so as I apply load or as I run the tool, we'll go ahead and we will get a graphic rundown of that particular operation. And in this case, this is kind of giving us a snapshot of what that particular rundown looked like. But if we do use this type of graphing function within the software that's provided, we're going to be able to get a much more granular view at any specific point within that graph, where we can look at maybe what the torque is, what the angle. So if you wanted to do some joint analysis, that would allow us to do that there. You can, again, get a snapshot of what that would look like for a particular joint that you may be using in this graphing function. We also have the ability to look at specific wiring signals. So we have our inputs and our outputs within the system. So if we need to check for any communication, errors, or if the system that we have, we need to do some double checking to make sure we've got the pin configuration for the wiring diagram correct, we can look at that. And so if I change or I run the tool, you'll see the output there, signals change. And that gives us the ability to make sure that with the outputs that we have selected through our digital I/O, that we are getting the right signals here. And so we can look at that in our monitoring tab. We also have the ability to look at the network that we have for the unit. So this is again with our Ethernet port. So we can connect to the software directly from a PC to the controller with the Ethernet port. We could also, again, put the controller on a network on the Ethernet port and communicate with the tool with the software to that specific controller over the network. There's another nice feature about these controllers is that they each have their own built-in web server. So if you don't have the software on a particular PC, but you're on the same network, you could log in to this particular controller via a web server and be able to change items such as presets and other parameters and settings to do that. So there are a number of different ways to connect and to be able to communicate with the controller. And then the Ethernet port is one of those. We also have our RS-232 port. This is going to tell us what our baud rate is set to. So if we are using this to connect to the software, we want to make sure that this is our current baud rate. If we're going to be using the controller hooked up to a barcode scanner, we would need to change that baud rate, and we do that in the settings menu of the controller. But again, this allows us just to monitor. We can also see the last errors that were the last 8 that we had seen on the controller, if you need to take a look at that. In our setting menu, this gives us the ability to look at or set the date and time for the controller. We also have some other options in here. We can go ahead and teach our different barcodes that we may be using for different models or different presets. And then we also have a barcode that we can use as part of a step within a model. And then we also have the amount of storage that is available on the controller's SD card. So you can see how much data is available for us to load onto that card. And then we also have our remote tab up here. Again, I'm sorry, it may be a little difficult to see this at the moment, but I might be able to make an adjustment here. There we go. So we have in the remote tab the ability to put the tool to run remotely. We can also check any outputs that may be happening with that. We can put the tool in reverse if we'd like. And we can select which preset we're using. This can be helpful if we're doing some type of monitoring or if we want to look at some other output functions just to make sure that we're getting our signals correct. We can also do some auto customization. This helps us to be able to maximize the amount of time it takes for a rundown. We have a backup where we can basically take a backup of all the parameters that we've set here. We can restore that backup. We can do a power reset, or we can do a complete factory reset to the system as well. And so all of that is located in the remote tab. And then if we go to our last window, which is our parameter tab, this is where we have the ability to set all of our presets in our fastening tab here. We have our advanced settings, our screw count functions, our inputs, our outputs, the controller parameters that we can set. We can set our network. We can also create our multi-sequence and our different models for the assembly process. And so we'll touch a little bit more on all of these kind of in our next session. And that will give us a good understanding of how we can use the tool, how we set it with the different presets and those different items. And so that's going to take place in about a half hour or so for our next class. So at this point, if we have any questions, we can look to answer those. You can go ahead and type those into the chat. That can be in either English or in Spanish. And we'll have Damien come back to us if we have any questions up to this point here.
Dave, we already answered some questions
Okay.
from some of the attendees, so there's no more questions so far.
Okay, so all right, fantastic. So we do have again the next session, which is going to be starting at the I guess would be the bottom of the next hour here, in about a half hour, where we're going to be looking at the parameter tab within, or excuse me, the fastening tab within the parameter menu. We'll look at how we set presets for different values. We'll look at the ability to set some of our advanced functions. We'll look at the controller and just the modeling and multi-sequence as well within that particular parameter menu. So with that, we look forward to seeing you here in our next one. And if you have any additional questions before we head off, we can try to answer those. So before I completely sign off, is there any other questions that we might have?
Yeah, there's one. Francisco is asking, how can measurement the torque in the screwdriver to be used, the value is correct? Okay, he's trying to ask, I think that how can he make sure that the actual torque value is correct?
Okay, so there are, this is done basically through the calibration process, whether it be our current control DC controller, but we also have our ECT product, which has a built-in transducer in it. So it's going to be actually measuring and monitoring the rundown. So you will be able to know for certain that that is the value of the torque that the tool is providing. You could also do some additional verification through the use of a rotary torque sensor and analyzer, where you would put that between the tool and your application, and you would be able to see the actual torque that you would be receiving. But that would be very similar to the ECT product with the built-in transducer in it. So I just also wanted to mention that if you have the need and the desire to take a look at the controller for your specific application or operation, we can certainly set up an online demonstration that would be more tailored to your specific need or specific question. We could set aside time where you can ask questions with your team or just by yourself, where it would be more of a one-on-one type of discussion and demonstration. So we can certainly take this into more in-depth demonstration for you. Again, these classes are kind of designed as an overview, but if you want to get specific into a specific application or process, we can do that for you with a more intimate and tailored demonstration. So with that, if we don't have any other questions, nothing came in between there.
He's got more additional specific questions about cost. I guess that we're gonna have to follow up with Francisco.
Yeah, we can certainly have that discussion offline and get the appropriate departments to speak with him about that. So,
Okay, cool. That was the last one.
all right. So with that, we look forward to seeing you again for our next session. And well, thank you very much.